What's up, everyone? It's Mr. Marambo coming at you with more science. First off, hopefully you checked out my last video. I just want to inquire about your well-being just to see how we're all doing. Get us in a headspace of, all right, we're into a new month. So what's there to expect? I hope you all are doing well and that you're all safe, healthy, and most of all, making the most out of your time this month. On today's schedule, we have a handful of things for you. So let's go ahead and move to your Google Classroom. Today, you're actually going to grade yourself on your plant resources project. Now, as per yesterday, a lot of you have already submitted your plant resources project, which is great because you should have at this point received some comments about edits you should be making and some thoughts you should reconsider so you can make improvements in your own controlled experiment. Today, I'm giving you a rubric in which you'll use to correctly and most importantly, accurately grade yourself on. So in short, you'll know what I'm expecting and how you measure up against that. So first things first, let's set ourselves up, making sure that we have our plant resources document, the one we've been working on the past week, open up, and also the gizmo experiment. Lastly, there is a new assignment posted with the rubric which you will submit by the end of today. Here's your plant resources project. This is my model. Here is your gizmo simulation. And lastly, on the screen, I'm going to show you your rubric and what it should look like. So, grading yourself. I am grading you on how you grade yourself so I can get a sense of where you think you are and if that's correct. Let's go over how you're going to do this. There are three parts to this grading system. There are three different grades you can give yourself and also three different parts of criteria that I'm looking for, which all should look very familiar. If you're giving yourself an 80%, make sure to either highlight or bold or both that section so I can clearly see that's what you're grading yourself on. So here, let's say I graded myself 100% across the board for my claim, evidence, and reasoning. There, I clearly show me that that is the grade I give myself. But do I actually meet that criteria? Let's go ahead and find out. Claim has two parts. The hypothesis is clearly stated in if-then, and it includes both the independent and dependent variable. I look at my hypothesis in question 3. It has an if-then statement, and I also include my independent and dependent variables in that hypothesis. I check that off on the mark. Second part of the claim. It is appropriately concluded from an interpretation of the evidence, supporting or going against the hypothesis in a clear manner. This means, did my interpretation leading towards my claim actually use the data in my data table, which is evidence, and did I name it in question 11? If you read my statements, yes, I do use the data there. And did I use that evidence and my interpretation of that evidence to support or refute my hypothesis? That is also there in number 12. I said my hypothesis was incorrect, so I refuted it. And I explained why it was incorrect using the evidence and what that evidence means, which is an interpretation of that evidence. So it's legit. The 100% I gave myself on the claim is the correct score that would be given. For evidence, the first part is, did I set up the data table correctly, showing the independent variable and control variables, and also showing the experimental groups and control groups. If I look at the data table setting up my experiment, question 9, you can see that yes, my groups are differentiated between control and experimental. I also have all my control variables, which is different than the control group, shown over here. And you can clearly see which one is my independent variable because it is the only thing, the one thing that is different between each group. So I'll give myself that point. Next, I need to collect data correctly, which means showing the dependent variables and the different experimental groups with the appropriate data. In short, this means that my dependent variables are shown in question number 10 and that I recorded my data correctly in each group. So when someone else does this experiment, their group C with the same type of variables, the same variables in it, should have the same results in the dependent variables. So that's true. So giving myself an 100% in this category of evidence is correct because I make sure that my data is set up correctly with all the right variables in group, and I also collected that data correctly with all the correct variables in groups. Lastly, it's our friend reasoning. So reasoning has to at least use one piece of data from your data tables in your interpretation of that data. This means for question 11, I need to see you using the numbers from your data tables, and these numbers should be correct, and you should interpret those numbers, meaning you should tell me what those numbers mean. If your data shows that 70 and 60 milliliters of water in a tomato plant is the amount of water it needs to grow the most mass, you can interpret that to mean that the strongest plant in terms of mass is the tomato plant that receives a moderate amount of water, no more than 70 milliliters of water. You can also tell me that the heavier plant is the one that's healthiest. So we should aim to have that amount of water per plant. Here, again, I'm using evidence, at least one piece of evidence I just named there, to make some interpretation to answer the question of number 11. Why do I think it happened this way? What does this say about the resource I changed and the resource needs of that plant? If I have that present, go ahead and give yourself an 100% on that section. And since you've gone through C, E, and R, you are complete with grading yourself with this rubric. Make sure to submit this by 3:30, which will act as your exit ticket for today. If you have any questions about your experiment, your control groups, your control variables, or anything in particular, don't hesitate to reach out. I greatly appreciate y'all working today. I'll see you next time.